Hi, everyone. Welcome to Radiant Living, Inspiring Humanity to Thrive. I'm your host, Marisa B. Today, I'd like to welcome iridologist and sobriety coach and mentor, Kyle Mays. Hi, Kyle. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, the first question I have is because I didn't even know how to say it correctly. I was calling it iridology and it's iridology. Can you explain a little bit about what exactly that is?
Yeah, sure. So, iridology or iris analysis is believed to have been around for at least 3,000 years. Um, what we know of is modern day Baghdad, Iraq, and the cradle of knowledge. That area, there was stones, tablets, markings on walls to indicate that people were looking in eyes for levels of health. Hippocrates spoke of it. There's a mention of it in the Bible, and it goes way back in some form of iris analysis. There's many other stories, some of them that are documented throughout history of. So there's the one that people like to tell is the owl story. There's a little boy in a garden who sees an owl that's entangled in the netting that they have over their garden. And when he goes to free the owl, he injures the owl's leg and claims to see a mark show up in the eye of the owl. And that's kind of where the story ends. But the true story of that is that little boy did grow up to become a practitioner of medicine and ended up working on trauma patients. And when the light bulb goes off is when he's actually in those trauma centers and he starts noticing markings in the eyes then of trauma patients who have really severe injuries. And there's another interesting one I like to share briefly of an iridologist that was from Germany who was captured by the Russians, and he was forced to be their doctor of trauma patients and wounded soldiers. And he wrote a book that is hard to find, and I don't know anyone that's ever came across it. But my mentor, Dr. David Pesek, used to speak about it, and he wrote a book called After 10,000 Deaths. And so it's a story or a book that he wrote about looking in the eyes of all these soldiers that were killed during World War II after they had died, before and after their passing. And so there's just a lot of stories of it. The most modern father of iridology is Bernard Jensen. That's who most people know of as any basic chart that you look up or Google or try to order off Amazon or something will most likely be a Bernard Jensen chart. I was first introduced to it by the Amish community in Kentucky around 25 years ago. Was just fascinated by it. There was people referring to this eye doctor that lived out in the middle of nowhere, and he was not an eye doctor. He was just an iridologist, but he was looking in people's eyes with a light lens and it's telling you things about your health, some thought and emotional things, asking about relationships with mother or father based on whether or not it was in the left or the right eye. And I was just really fascinated with it and hobbied around with it for several years after that, and decided to look into it to see if there was more of an educational aspect of learning more about it. And that's how I found Dr. David J. Pesek and discovered holistic iridology. Went to school for that in 2014, and in the last 5 or so years have turned it into more of just a hobby and actually doing it full time as a practice and making a living off of it. So, yeah, it's been a part of my life for a long time. And
There is a chart, though. I mean, right, because you are a diplomat in it. I mean, there is a certification, a degree. You've gone to school, and those that have finished are known as diplomats of iridology. And it's a very definite system. Even and I know that it's a little bit controversial. There are certain individuals that want to say it's a pseudoscience, but they called chiropractors, and chiropractic technique pseudoscience for a long time. So, that definition is only as good as what the current, I guess, research shows or doesn't show. But there's very definitely a chart. And when you mention iris, that's the colored part of the eye, correct? But it's not just looking at the iris, right? It's looking at the whole eye because there is a some sort of definite structure. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Hi, everyone. Marisa B here from Radiant Living. If you like what we're doing and want to keep the conversations going, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know every time we upload a video. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you have the pupil, the iris, and then the white part, which is called the sclera. And all of that factors into an iris analysis. Most of it, at least for us iridologists, we're just looking at the iris, but there are certain points of the pupil and the sclera that I do look at in the reports that I do. But yeah, every organ in the body is represented through the eyes. So think of the eyes, it's referred to as the windows of the soul. Mm-hmm. But also think of it as the monitor to our computer. So this is our monitor, and everything else is an extension from that. And that's kind of what the iris charts reflect. There is what I consider an older version of an iris chart, which is the Bernard Jensen chart. And then there's been a couple updates that were made to that in the last 20 years by Dr. Pesek. Through his Bernard's blessing, he actually was under his wing for I think it was 2 decades, and he developed more of an area that involves the thoughts and emotions for the brain area. And so that's one of the big changes that he made. And he based that off 40 years of being a psychiatrist and looking in their eyes through all those years. And I think before his passing, which was very recent, he had looked at over 7,000 pairs of eyes to come up with those new conclusions of changing the chart. So it's definitely an analysis of the iris at the end of the day, but the pupil and the sclera is factored into a few things as well.
Now, do you measure what's there, or if there's a change in the eye? Like, do you have to see people? Because how do you judge? I know you mentioned the story of the owl, and the owl had an actual marking in the eye, and its foot was damaged, and the child that later grew to be the doctor indicated that the mark in the eye was similar to the damage that was done, or it was reflective of the damage. So how do you work on a client when they come, if they're already not well, or they're already in dis-ease? How do you know what it looked like before, what it currently looks like? Are there very definitive signs that will show that there's some sort of dis-ease going on with them?
Yeah, well, so in iridology, we should never diagnose anything as a disease. So to go back where you were talking about some of the things that you may read online about us being quacks and all that stuff, first up, to respond to that, I would say consider the source, because this is a preventative measure. This is a way of giving you a roadmap. So I use the number around 80% of what you're going to see in an iris report I do for you is based on predispositions. It's what you came into this world with. So it doesn't mean that when you see certain markings in the iris that is something that is weakened about you right now. You were predisposed before you got here to be weaker in that area. And if something that has led you to come see me is already an ailment, then we can talk about how that probably has been on the weaker side your whole life. You're also made up to 62 of your ancestors. So all this stuff that we come into the world with is not just us, and it goes beyond just mom and dad. So that's a thing that, there's been misunderstandings about that on some people who cast judgment on iridology as being pseudo or whatever, is that a long time ago, people did think everything they saw was current. And, over the last 20 to 40 years, there's just been a lot more science and research done on it to have a better understanding. Yes, sometimes it is, but most of this is what we came into the world with. And so I basically describe it as it tells you where you've been, where you are, and where you have the potential to go. And when I generate these reports for people, I give you the steps of how to approach it, even in the future, to just strengthen those areas that are weaker. I'm not sure did I answer your question?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I mean, it's really a preventative measure, or maybe a marker of where you're at and where you might go, if you don't change, your patterns. Because I'm
Yep.
assuming that that's why people come to you, because they very definitely can change their patterns so that they can avoid going in the direction that it may look like right now. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure that
This
that's
is,
really,
iridology is obviously is for anyone who wants to do it, but it's basically for someone who wants to be handed the keys with a roadmap and to take control of your health. It's one of the least invasive, most preventative measures you can take to be able to take control. If you're someone who wants to get out of the system, that wants to just be healthy on their own, to follow certain nutritional paths, the thoughts and emotions particularly is something that we really focus on. When I say that, these are things you came into the world with. If you're showing a really weak area, and say the kidneys or adrenals, and pancreas and all these things, or liver, we're gonna if you feel fine and you just came out of curiosity or wanting to take preventative steps, we're going to talk about things like anger and resentment and forgiveness and grief, and how if you're showing these certain areas of being weakened, these are things that are going to happen that are normal in our lives. But a lot of us tend to suppress them. So that's the jumping off point for me. I really try to focus on thoughts and emotions, especially if you're someone who just feels good, came out of curiosity. Even if you're not, though, if you're really struggling with certain areas, I have my own lived experiences and have met a lot of other people that have simply just put down stuff that we're carrying that is not necessary, that's not ours to carry, forgiven certain people that have impacted me in my life as far back as 25 to 30 years ago. And certain physical pains and ailments have left my body. And I've talked to a lot of other people who have experienced that too. I don't want to try to simplify it to that's what it is every time. But if we start there, sometimes that's all it takes.
Yes,
and that's
exactly.
Free.
That's
Forgiving someone who's wronged you in the past to feel better is free. That doesn't require a prescription.
It's true. It's true. And you mentioned a little bit about yourself and what you've gone through. And I was wondering if you want to share that with the audience, because I did mention in the beginning that you do, in fact, offer sobriety coaching and mentoring for those that may want to reach out to you. And I wanted to see if you wanted to discuss that a little bit today.
Sure. Well, so, what I offer to people is going beyond the steps and things that are offered to people out there for free. I'm not the type of sobriety coach that discourages people from entering AA and things like that. I just know that I have lived experiences with what I went through, that there are some things that can help you go beyond that. I'm a big supporter of AA, but I think anyone who's struggling, the first thing you can do is admit that and know that it's okay, that we don't win all our battles, and fighting one with alcohol is a difficult one. So the first step, I would just tell people to just admit that they have a problem and that you can't do it on your own. And that starts with getting help. And it also starts with finding your version of a higher power and just kind of relinquishing some of this control. So and it started with me in 2020. I had been drinking for 25 years, and I had been, there's also, you talk about controversy. It's disputable whether or not we are addicted to alcohol or not. And what I try to get people who want to come see me outside of the AA circles and things is to find out where it started. When did you take the first drink? Why did you take it? And what happened continuing after that to make you want to stay in that state? Mine's multiple things. I was under a lot of pressure. I had a lot of fear, and it took all that away from me. So at 41 years old, however old I was when this happened, when I put the bottle down, I had to start feeling those things, even the things that I was running from as a teenager. And so it's uncomfortable. I've referred to it as a fiery hell that you're going to have to get in and burn until all the things that need to be burned off burn off. And as uncomfortable and as unmotivating as that may sound, it's just the truth. It was for me anyway. so yeah, and I help people with that. I encourage people to get out and move their bodies. Just walking, for the
Yes.
first 3 months of sobriety, I walked anywhere from 5 to 20 miles a day. And yes, you do have time to do that. I skipped dinner every night. That was how I did it. When I got home from work, I walked till it was dark, and then I came home. So yeah, there's just a lot of things. And like I said, the first thing anybody should do, I'm not trying to promote myself in any way. The first thing you need to do is admit that you have a problem and get help immediately. Also, the big thing to remember is quit thinking about what life's going to be like 6 months from now when you're not a drinker anymore. 24 hours a day is all you need to focus on in the beginning. Don't worry about the big wedding that's coming up or the 4th of July cookout that you host every year. That's not where you're at right now. So quit trying to live in the future and just be present with the moment right now. I think every AA circle I've ever seen is talking about 24 hours.
Right.
Even to the next one, even for people who've been doing it for years, that people share appreciation for the past 24, and they're just looking forward to the next 24. And that's all you should focus on.
And well said, because it is one day at a time. And it is the 24 hours to the next day.
Yeah.
It's so true.
That future thing in our heads probably has a big thing to do with why some people drink in the first place. They're worried about things that are beyond their control, and you just got to be present for now. And that was one of the things that kicked it off. I don't mean to skip or undermine what got me there. I had a wife at the time that told me she was leaving me, and she did it in the most calm voice that she'd ever used of any argument we'd ever had about my drinking. And she said, I'm leaving you simply because I'm sick of you not being present. And when people talk about their rock bottoms or their awakenings, when the word present rolled off her tongue, it felt like a sledgehammer hit me in the chest. Like I felt it deeply that I could never drink again, no matter what happened between us or anything else. And I don't want to speak on it like I was so confident that I knew I was going to quit drinking. There was just something clicking that said, you can't do this again. Because it wasn't just that I hadn't been present for a 10-year marriage. I hadn't been present for anything since I was 15 years old. And that clicked with me. I was like, it's not just this, it's everything. I have not been present for anything in my life. And wow, what a lot of catching up I've had to do since then. And that's not, I don't say that in a bad way, but being present is still a motivator. And that's a part of the 24 hours a day. Be present for the 24 hours that you have before you right now. Quit worrying about what the summer brings and all that with your sobriety. It's just be present with it right now.
All right. And you're a living example of that. And now you help others with that, in addition to the iridology, which I think might even go hand in hand, because I'm assuming that there are individuals that suffer from this disorder, and you can see that in the eyes. Is there anything in particular that looks different? I mean, if someone comes to you and they are having a drinking problem, would that be seen in the eyes?
Well, you wouldn't see that someone, there are certain things that you could understand that would make someone a little more prone to the addictive behaviors. If there's self-esteem issues in the brain, or if fear comes up in the kidney and adrenal areas, things like that, which I have. And I didn't pay much attention to it when Dr. Pesek did my analysis in 2014, because I was still a drinker, and there was a part of me that didn't want to see it and hear it, but it was all there. And I don't want to say that I was predisposed to be an alcoholic, but I was predisposed to be weak in the areas that would make someone want to drink. And I completely reevaluated that when I quit drinking and looked at my Irish report again, dusted it off, and I was just like, wow, it really does kind of lay this out for me. It didn't say I was going to be a drinker, but it did say I was going to struggle with certain aspects of my thoughts and emotions, that if I went through these experiences in life without the knowledge, turning to the bottle would be an easy thing. And that is what happened to me.
Wow. And so now explain to me a little bit about, if someone comes to you, the first thing you do is examine them. And then you say you have a report that you give. So they actually, somebody gets a physical report.
Yeah, so there's about at least 3 different ways to work with me. One of them in person is what I call the old style of a live eye reading, where I would just use a light and lens like the Amish guy did with me. And I can tell you some very basic strengths and weaknesses, obviously the color of your eye and some of the predispositions that come with that. And that requires to be in person. All the other reports would consist of me having to take pictures with my iris camera, which you can see right behind me. I have gotten into the world of letting people send me to be able to work long distance and remote. I've come up with good instructions on how to do it with a cell phone, and I've had some people do a really good job of sending me good pictures, because that's the thing. They need to be good quality pictures.
Right.
And then that is kind of all that happens in the first appointment with me, is just getting good pictures of your iris. I get multiple shots of both eyes with different sets of lighting. And then, yeah, I'll spend, depending on the constitution and the eye color, because every eye is different. So I'll say 1 to 3 days minimum looking at someone's eyes on my computer and coming up with this report. Because there's no, like, there's some jumping off points with each color of eyes, but every iris on the planet is different. There are no two alike in the world. They're more unique than our fingerprints. So there's no like, oh, I've seen this one before and I just put the report in and just be done. Like, you start from the ground with the color and then you go from there, and it's a whole new experience every time. And it's kind of rewarding in that, it's a blessing to be able to look in people's eyes and see kind of where they come from and where they're going. And so I take my time and I look through each detail of the eye each time I do it. And then, I send that in an email usually. There are some people that request that I print it completely out into a binder style and mail it to them, which I do encourage people to do that with the email as well. But I just send an email document of a report. I do a brief version, which is around 25 pages. And then the comprehensive is a 75-page report that covers everything. Yeah, the comprehensive report's really good because the first few pages of that is some of the history that we've already talked about, where iridology comes from and where it is today. It also comes with a black and white version of the chart. And explains definitions and things throughout your report, where you can really learn how I did this, how I came up with what I saw, and a way for you to just learn yourself a little bit about iridology along the way.
Yes, I would think that people have a lot of questions because it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I just didn't even, like, I personally, just you discussing the different parts of the eye. I mean, I was fairly certain that the iris is the colored part, but like the sclera, I never heard of that until you mentioned it. I mean, I know the white part, but never knew the name of it. And I'm assuming that clients are the same. Like, I see you have the special camera. You mentioned the special camera there. Can you tell me a little bit about that camera? It must take something really up close to see inside the eye, or to see as close as possible in the eye?
Yeah, I mean, this one specifically is just for iridology. I mean, I could take it apart and use it like a normal camera, but this from the ground up was actually built by Dr. Pesek. Besides being an iridologist for decades, he also has been a photographer since he was 13. And so he built this camera specifically to take good pictures of irises. And so, there's rods on the side that shoot light from the camera that come into the side of the eyes. Because if you shine light directly on an iris, the bulb is going to reflect there and it's going to block certain parts of the eye. So he's designed this where it shoots light in from multiple angles. There's a way to shift it to where it's medial and lateral. And so when I say I take several pictures of each eye, that's why I'm doing that, is I'm shifting it to be able to see every part of the iris. There's different settings for the different colors. Like, you wouldn't take the same picture of a blue eye as you would a dark brown eye, and you would need more lighting and a different setting for the brown eye. So it's very specific and detailed to that. And that's why it's like, it doesn't always work to do it remote. If you're wanting a comprehensive report, but I do have some people that just really nail it and do that. I've even had one client, apparently there's a lot of malls and places that have kiosks, because iris photography has turned into a big thing where they kind of alter it, and they even make
Oh.
it, look more, I don't know what word to use, elaborate than the actual eye,
Mhm.
of kind of almost like a cartoonish aspect to it.
Right.
I've had one client that went to one of those photographers, and they sent me back really good pictures. So, yeah.
Hmm. And you say that somebody can do it with their cell phone. I mean, I'm sure you have to give instruction to
Yeah.
them because I'm sure you need more than one picture.
Yeah, and
But
it's you have to kind of get the room dark, and it has to be someone else taking the picture. It can't be like in a
mhm,
selfie form, because you need to be
right.
focused, looking straight ahead when you do it. But
Mhm.
yeah, there is a way to get good ones. There's a lot more success when it's blue or hazel. It's hard for people to get a good quality picture of the brown eye with a cell phone, but I have had a couple people that have done it. I
Because I
also
would
can
think because of the
travel. Like,
color, right?
I
The
don't have a
color, right?
lot
It's
of.
because
I'm
I was
sorry.
asking, it's because of the color, right? That you mentioned that's a little bit more difficult with the cell phone with the brown eye color. I'm assuming it's because of the color, because of the darkness of the color, as you said that the
Yeah.
blue is lighter. And then now you just mentioned also that that you can travel, but you're on the West Coast, correct? If I'm not mistaken, you're on the West Coast in the United States.
Yes.
Yes.
But I do have a case that this camera completely breaks down into, that can be taken on airplanes and everything, that is possible. I do events that are, outside of my hometown and where my
Yes.
office is and stuff, that I drive to. But yeah,
Mhm.
there are ways to go to events that are even farther away and take all my setup with me and do it that way. We've been talking to some people in Utah about coming and setting up for a few days at like a similar wellness place like
Yes.
that we have here, and just setting up there and staying for
Mhm.
a few days, and getting multiple people lined up to come before then. So there's always a way to work with me,
Mhm.
and I do have a lot of colleagues that, if it's just not possible for me to do it myself, that I can always recommend someone else.
And that's what I was going to ask you because I don't remember in all the years in New York City. I'm currently no longer in New York City. I'm still in New York State, but I'm no longer in New York City. But all the years in New York City, I never heard of one iridologist. And then many years ago, when I moved up to the state of New York, a friend did not drive and she asked me to take her to a doctor, and he was a medical doctor, and she was going there to have her eyes read. And I said to her, what does that, what do you mean you're having your eyes read? I said, I thought you said you have a doctor's appointment. She goes, yes. And she told me his name, and he was definitely an MD. And she said, but he's an iridologist. And that's what I'm going there for. And I did drive her, but I didn't at the time understand anything. But she went and she got her report, and she had to go back a second time and so forth. But that was the first time I had ever heard that there was somebody who did that. He just happened to be a medical doctor as well, but he used iridology. But in New York City,
Yeah.
and I'm sure they're there now because you mentioned colleagues. So how many do you think are out there? Is it really an area of study that a lot of people do, or is it something that's a smaller niche?
Well, all of my colleagues are going to be people who went to the International College of Iridology and are actually certified or diplomates of holistic
Yes.
iridology through Dr. David J. Pesek. I think there is at least one of us almost in every state. There may be a few states where there's not one. Um,
Mhm.
and so the reason most people haven't heard of it is it's not as big in the United States, but it is a thing in other parts of the world. The
Mhm.
Germans used to be really big on it, and even you're talking about an MD in New York. I don't know
Mhm.
if it's still true or not, but you used to have to take a semester of iridology in Germany to
Mhm.
be an allopath doctor.
No, I
So
see.
it's known in a lot of other places, and you'll occasionally get a client that's from another part of the world that has moved
Mhm.
here, and they heard about it before they moved to the
Right.
United States, but they don't know about it, and they're just kind of like, oh, I didn't realize there was one of these here, and they come see you. But
Mhm.
it's we the practice of iridology fell victim to the Flexner report, like a lot of other holistic practices in the
Mhm.
early 1900s. And it is due to the fact that it gives you the control. Like, when you have the
Well,
keys and have your roadmap, and you
mhm.
know how to take steps to take care of yourself, that's not profitable to the industry.
That's
So there's
right.
a lot of, you won't find the American Medical Association saying anything good
Backing this,
online
yes.
about
No.
iridology.
Well, no, why would they, right? Because then that defeats their purpose, right? If you are taking control of your wellness and your health and you're dealing with this before something happens, then there's no need to go further. I mean,
And
none of us
even
are going to
without,
live forever, right? None of us are going to live forever, but why should we not be living healthy in full
yeah,
wellness?
yeah, and when you speak of the MDs, I mean, it wasn't completely out of the realm to do that, even as an allopath doctor. I can
Mhm.
remember just as a kid in the 80s that doctors used to look in your eye and they used to look at your
Mhm.
tongue. And I don't think
Right.
anybody does that anymore. They used to be the first thing was they shined a light in your
Yes.
eyes and they probably were just looking at the sclera, the white part, to see if,
Hmm.
because that's the white part does reveal more of a current condition. And I don't even know if they knew that or not at the time. But and to look at your tongue and just kind of look at your
Hmm.
face, like iris analysis, tongue
Hmm.
reading, facial analysis, all of that
Hmm.
is a holistic practice that's been around for
Hmm.
thousands of years. And it can tell you a lot, or it can tell you, a little. It does, but it's worth taking a look at the
Yes.
beginning of an appointment. And they used to do that. I remember as a kid they would do that.
Oh, I do too. Now that you said that, I do. That was the first thing they did, right? They would look right
Yeah,
into your eyes. They had their light and they showed, they told you look straight ahead and they shone
yeah,
the light right into your eyes. That was the first thing before they looked down your throat or at your ears afterwards. I think the ears were the third thing, but that's what they
yeah.
did before they did anything or even asked you what was wrong or why you were there that day. They had that system. So yeah, it's true that they were looking into your eyes to see, what was there, I guess, and I mean, they must have learned something in medical school. They had to have learned something about that because why were they all doing it? And it was very real. It was very real physical looking at the individual. And so I just I find it fascinating and I'd like to know how can people get a hold of you? I know you say that it's better in person, but you are doing some things online or more, I guess I'm assuming more this type of conversation with the client, that it's a live conversation, but but online. How do they get a hold of you and how can they find out more about you? Do you have a website and do you have a calendar on the website? How do you work?
Yeah, I have a website and it's just simply kylemaiziridology.com. People can contact me in multiple different ways through that. Book a 15-minute discovery call just to check in and talk about whether or not it's a good fit, and especially if you're remote, and just talk about whether or not you're capable of sending me pictures. Then I can email the instructions for people to follow. And then I have, I don't know, a mediocre social media presence on Instagram and
Mhm.
Facebook. Um, I have a personal page, and then I have a business page on Facebook.
Mhm.
It's called Kyle Mays Iridology as well. So those are KYLEMAYSIRIDOLOGY.com. Kyle Mays Iridology.
Mhm. I'll make sure that I list that in the description. Also, I'll make sure that all of
Yeah.
the ways that people can contact you and especially social media. You say it's mediocre. Like, do you do any shorts or any have any information on the pages? Sometimes I know some of the guest speakers that I've had on the show, they actually sometimes do a little short or they do some kind of talking on their professional page or their Instagram page. Sometimes they run something. So I will definitely list that as well. I was just wondering if you did that also, because I'm assuming there's so much to talk about with this because it's such an ancient practice. I mean, you're talking about 3,000
Yeah.
years, and it's fascinating to hear where it's been found, that the record of it that's out there for so long.
Yeah, I do speak and do posts about iridology on all those platforms in some form. I wish and want to do it more. I've got my hands in multiple things. I'm also a homesteader that I raise pastured poultry. And
Oh,
I
wow.
feel like I tell people I've got like 5 part-time jobs, and one of these days, one of them is going to make me so busy where I'll only have one job. But I enjoy doing all these things, from
Mhm.
holistic iridology to sobriety mentoring, men's work. homesteading. I do all these things because it's what I love, and I'm really blessed to be able to have my hand in that many things that
Right.
helps
Right. Because we didn't even
other
talk about the
people and
men's
helps
work.
me as well.
Yes, because we didn't even talk about the men's work because you do men's groups, right? You do men's groups, men's retreats and things like that. So you're also busy with that. I just didn't know about the poultry. I would think that would be, I mean, in full time as far as full time work, physical work, right? Because you actually are raising certain types of poultry. Are they
Yeah,
are they
it's a lot
Go
busier in
ahead.
the summer for sure. June
Hmm.
through September, it takes up a lot more time.
Hmm.
But it's just another part of my, I consider it a spiritual practice to be connected to the land and connected to the
Hmm.
food that I eat. To not only know where it comes from, but to be really in contact with it from beginning to end.
Hmm.
Um, it'd be hard for me to move on from that aspect because even I think everybody should have their hand in that system in some way, form, or
Yes.
fashion, even if it's just growing sprouts in your big city apartment. There's
Hmm.
something that we can always find a way to connect to, and I want to stay as connected to it as possible.
I have to agree with you.
And
I actually did my property. I permacultured I mean, I don't have a large patch of land by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a little bit of land, but I permacultured everything. We put in trees, fruit-bearing trees, and put in a lot of vegetables and growing a lot of things on our own land. But the reason I had started, I mean, I always had a small garden, but I saw a gentleman in California who was teaching young kids how to grow vegetables in an urban setting in California on the rooftop of an apartment. And I thought if they can do that, and he's teaching them how to be in contact with their food, and to be a part of growing, in the dirt on the land, that I said I can do it here. So that's what we had started to do. We made the garden much larger and then started putting in the fruit bearing trees. And I think you're absolutely right with being a part of the land in contact with it and having that understanding of where our food comes from, what we grow and how we what we sow, what we grow, what we then use. But the poultry,
yeah,
tell me, are they now do you just have the chickens for eggs, or you're actually eating the poultry meat as well?
we have them for eggs year round. Being in the Pacific Northwest, it's difficult to raise pastured poultry in the winter because
Hmm.
of all the rain. So
Hmm.
that's where the operation for that is just June through September when it's drier. Because we
Hmm.
do raise them on pasture, we do move them every day. It's not in
Hmm.
any way mimicking a factory farm type system at all.
Right.
Um, yeah, and I want to encourage people. You were talking about what you do. I'm talking about what I do. That uh, I think people get stuck putting too much pressure on themselves of thinking that they have to
Hmm.
be a farmer. Just work with what you got. Like I said, if you've just got an apartment window, start
Hmm.
some sprouts and just start getting connected that way. There are a lot of overreaching rules and regulations when it comes to
Hmm.
small towns and
Yes.
cities. When you're talking about fruit trees and landscaping,
Yes.
like if we all came together in our communities and talked
Hmm.
about it, we could make change that way. There's no reason for every neighborhood to have this perfect landscaping of trees that don't
Right.
produce anything to eat, and
Right.
every
Or
space in between
lawns,
those.
lawns with tons of chemical pesticides,
Yes.
right?
We
When
waste a
and
lot of land in this
oh,
country based on lawns and mow it with
and
lawnmowers.
what they're getting rid of, what everybody wants to get rid of, or many people are getting rid of, are actually herbs and
Mhm.
plants that can be medicinal, natural and medicinal at the same time, and that's what they want to get rid of. I find that
Yeah,
amazing because really all you have to do is go in your backyard to grab up everything. Of course, if it's not chemically laden, but it's all there for us. I mean, when you think about it, how the planet has provided us. It's everything that many are trying to eradicate, to kill off, and it's just there to be grabbed and used. Um,
yeah. We're
and
supposed to
it's
work with
healthy.
it, not against it.
Yes,
And I think that's what's
exactly.
happened since World War II. We came home from World War II with a war mentality of we got to, Mother Nature is against us. We've got to fight
Hmm.
back. We've got to plow, disc, spray, kill.
Hmm.
Um, we just, the truth is we have to work with it. It
Yeah.
provides more than we could ever imagine and more than we could ever use. And we just got to be gentle and work with it.
Mhm. That's so right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I so appreciate it. And I so appreciate you taking the time because I know you're very busy. And like I said, I knew you did a few things. I didn't know the extent, especially the poultry now, because to me, that's a big job, because you're responsible for other life. And as you said, there are certain seasons where you are, but I do appreciate it that you came on to explain this today. I will definitely link all of the URLs in the description so that anybody from the audience wants to get in touch. And I hopefully will see you on the East Coast sometime. I would love to see if you come out this way. Please let me know. Would love to hear you talk at some event or see what's going on. I know that's a big travel, from one side to the other, but if you do come out, please let us know here.
I will. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kyle. Take care.
You too.
Bye now.